So it's been 3 weeks since the Nintendo Switch Lite first came out, and when this thing was first announced, we of course all were completely excited about it. Not everybody, most of us. The people that at least knew we'd probably be buying it or would at least be interested in it. We all saw what this thing was gonna be. We saw the release trailer, we saw the release date, we started getting more details about it, and then from there pretty much everybody who wanted it already knew that they were the ones that wanted it, and that this product was actually for them or for you, and so you went out and bought it. I went and got one pretty much like day 2 after this thing first came out. It's been 3 weeks and I wanted to just basically have just a small discussion how this thing is gonna hold up and just what I think about it. So yeah, 3 weeks ago the Nintendo Switch Lite came out. I got my hands on one. And between me and my son, this is pretty much my son's. I'll be getting another one at some point, I'm sure. But basically between me and him, we kind of trade it back and forth. He goes to school, sometimes I use it. I still use my regular Switch, of course. And that's kind of the point of it, is that you can use it if you want or not. And the way that both of your accounts kind of sync to one another, that also makes it kind of handy, but also a little bit, you know, having to jump through hoops. So basically when he's playing the thing, I'll just play whatever games that I'm playing on mine, and usually for that, it'll be a game that I actually own the cartridge for, not a digital game. As he's using my library, there's only a few games that I have on cartridge that he would actually want to play on this, such as like Mario Kart 8, Super Smash Brothers, you know, stuff like that. But I have a pretty big array of digital games that are on my profile. So going back and forth, he pretty much plays some of the digital games, and one of the main problems with this thing is that it's not as unified as most people would like it, and it's not unified as much as I would like it to be. The way that I think it should work, and I kind of understand Nintendo's way of doing things, because realistically, if I bought Super Smash Brothers digitally, and then there's 8 people in my house, or even just friends of mine, I would basically be able to just give them my password, have them link my account onto their Switch, and then they would be able to play the game for free. And I think Nintendo needs to kind of reel it back a little bit and understand that there are going to be people who have a regular Nintendo Switch and a Switch Lite, and maybe add some sort of minimum to the amount of profiles that you can actually link with the Nintendo Switch, and maybe make it to be 2, so that way if you have a regular Switch and you own digital games, you could get a Switch Lite for your kid and not have to buy those same digital games again, and you could just hand them the Switch and have them just go ahead and start playing. So the way that's working right now is that you have your primary named Switch, and then you have your other Switch, and it doesn't matter which system it's actually tied to, but basically what you do is one is primary and then the other will be your secondary. So the primary one takes precedent over everything. So this Nintendo Switch Lite is basically my secondary, and my kid uses it, so he might be playing a digital game, and then if I'm just upstairs or in another room, or even if I was out of the house and still attached to Wi-Fi and I go to sign into one of my digital games, it'll check the internet, and then whatever game that he's playing that's not on the cartridge, it'll boot him out of it. And so basically the one kind of hoop that you can get through without having to do that is by making one of the ways that you can get through doing this is by basically connecting to the internet, checking that your game can be played, and then basically going into the airplane mode and turning that on, which turns the internet off. And then your other console, you could basically play the same game or another one that's in your digital library, and it'll just connect to the internet, see if the software can be played, and then it'll go right through and play it. So I understand the need for Nintendo to kind of put a little bit of a grip on this in terms of there being able to just be somebody and have multiple Switches that are playing the same game but have only actually purchased it once. it kind of goes back to the day of physical media where if you want to play the game and your system is in the next room, but there's only one cartridge or disc in the house, you kind of got to wait till I'm done with it before you could put it into your system. And that kind of brings up another point of this digital media that we're going towards. I personally think digital games should be cheaper. Now, of course, it's the same content and stuff like that, but the profit margins on these digital games costing the same and being put out to retail in a digital shop at the same price as the physical release that they have, the margins on it are monumental because when they're done making the game, they just publish it onto the shop and then that's it. They're not getting the game onto like a master and then making copies, in Nintendo's case, for the cartridges, and then printing the plastic and getting the chip into the actual cartridge shells, then printing the labels, then running those down the line. And you're making all these cases and all these papers. There's no booklets or pamphlets anymore, but well, in some special release editions, but even in some of those cases, there are some special games like a Sonic Mania on the Nintendo Switch. Comes in a nice shiny box. You got to print that. Then you got to wrap them all up, put them into pallets, forklifts, gas, time, the manpower, moving them to trains, planes, whatever other types of vehicles, and then basically shipping them here to there, unpacking them, putting them on the shelves. In some cases, some trucks might dump them off at another distribution center, and they might wrap up more boxes of them, pull them off of pallets, divvy them up differently into different boxes and stuff, re-saran wrap it, put it onto another truck before shipping it further. You understand all the gas and the time and the money and the manpower and the resources, the cardboard, ink, paper, all the electricity, all that stuff costs a hell of a lot more than it would to just publish your digital game and make it live on something like the Nintendo Switch eShop. So I get that Nintendo, they don't want to give that up, or who would? Not really many games that are making digital copies would want to lower the price simply because it's not physically on a shelf. But at least for physical games, just having them on the shelf alone, the shelf space costs money, like per square inch. They have to calculate it up just to get your game into a Nintendo case at a Walmart is going to be costing you money, or Xbox or PlayStation 4, whatever the game is. Every shelf space that is holding something costs money to have your product on that shelf. So that's just one of the issues of kind of getting a Switch Lite, or even just having a secondary Switch in general. But this video is basically just about the Nintendo Switch Lite. But so when me and my kid are playing, if there's something that I want to play that's digital and he's playing a digital game, I basically have to have him back out of it. I'll take my regular Switch, it'll see if the software can be played, then I'll go into AirPlay mode, and then he can basically play the same game if he wants, not connected to me or online or anything like that, of course, in terms of playing multiplayer with me. But then he can basically play the game. I'm in airplane mode. I can still save my progress and stuff like that, and then take it off of airplane mode later. So that's one of the main hoops. But basically what I wanted to get down to was that I've had this thing 3 weeks, and we've probably played, I would say probably about maybe 80 hours, kind of maybe half and half for the both of us. He plays it sometimes for 20 minutes before going to school, then he'll get home, maybe play it for an hour. I mean, of course he's a kid, he kind of beats on it. It gets dirty, I clean it. He hasn't really, he's dropped it a few times. He even stood on it at one point, don't even ask. But it didn't break, but it did kind of bring up the kind of issue of the quality. I'm wondering how well this is going to actually hold up during time, because it's still like new. The sticks still feel good, they're not loose. Clicking down still feels good. I gotta say, I really like the D-pad. Actually, it's not too bad. The spike on it could have been a little bit bigger, and maybe I could order one offline and kind of modify it. But really the main thing, I'm getting these squeaks kind of from the L and R buttons. And it's more not from pushing these sides, but from pushing kind of up here. And that's sort of causing friction, and most people are gonna kind of push the button more in the center or the outside than they are gonna be kind of riding them up top like this and pushing these here. But they kind of go back and forth in terms of which one squeaks louder. But that kind of brings me to one of the next points, is that just for being 3 weeks old, and as I said, we're trading it on and off, back and forth. Sometimes I'll play like Dragon Quest 11, and then I have to transfer my save data over to the Switch Lite, play it for a couple hours, whatever, save it, and then transfer it back so that when he goes to play like Smash Brothers, you know, he doesn't accidentally mess up my save. And then I know there can also be another problem where if you have like multiple accounts and you both have Nintendo Switch Live online, you know, there can be an issue where your primary Switch takes precedent with the cloud saves and basically keeps those as kind of the newest and up-to-date ones. And there can be an issue where if you maybe take your Switch and put it offline, there's a possibility of coming back to online and then basically being updated with an older cloud save versus a game that you just put a couple hours of progress onto. Or say you went away for a weekend and you didn't have internet, there's a possibility of getting your saves kind of not corrupted, but kind of the priority of the older cloud save might take precedent over your actual newer save, depending, and that could be an issue. I haven't had that issue, and I don't think I'm going to, but I think for some who kind of take this thing out and travel a little bit more, I do think that could be an issue for them. So that's one of the things to kind of look out for. And so one of the other things that it brings me to is the build quality of it. Now, it's good, and yeah, the shoulder buttons squeak a little bit, but one of the things that I like the most is the shell that's on it. Now, on like the older Joy-Con, I can't really get it to show up here, but you know, always riding your thumb on these buttons here, kind of over time, you get this kind of, you know, the oils on your finger and from rubbing, kind of in this X pattern here, you kind of get a, when you actually put it into the light and get a glare off of it, you can see that it kind of, you know, it kind of polishes in between the buttons and it kind of makes it shine. It takes away that brand new Joy-Con feel of that kind of gritty, because your fingers and your oils and you're rubbing on it, you're basically buffing it down to a shine. And so far for 3 weeks with the Nintendo Switch Lite, I haven't had that issue at all, and I don't see any like discoloration or anything like that in, especially between the face buttons here. I'm not seeing that at all, so that's a plus. And I do think the quality of the shell that they actually use, for it being like a matte finish, it's probably better that way, especially for kids. And the only other problem that I kind of have with it is, of course, with the buttons being white, I mean, you're gonna get some discoloration, and especially a kid playing it. I can't really show it that well, but they're not as white as they were. They're kind of, it's not even like really dirt or anything you can wipe off. It's just kind of getting like a dirt look to it, where it's just discoloring kind of a little bit to like a grayish versus the white, and that's just kind of problematic use of having like the face buttons and the D-pad and the shoulder buttons being white. So there's not really much that you can do about that. But I just wanted to do a quick video about the Nintendo Switch Lite, and I want to know if you picked it up, if you've had any problems with it, you know, definitely let me know in the comments, because so far, aside from the cloud save and one of them taking precedent depending on if one of your Switches is connected to the internet or not, and of course, when you go into the eShop and you go to your profile and stuff like that, you can scroll down and decide to make one of the Switches the primary console, which doesn't really matter. I mean, most people would think the primary console is going to be the one that they're spending the most time on, and that the name is supposed to be indicative of that, but really it doesn't seem to work like that. Me, I still have my regular Switch as the primary one, and I haven't yet put the Nintendo Switch Lite as the primary, and I've thought about doing that just for the fact that it makes it a little bit easier that if my kid wants to play a digital game and I'm already playing something, you know, it's kind of, I guess, easier for me to just get off of the internet and to just either play a cartridge or a digital game. You know, I'm kind of sharing my Switch games with my kids, so there's a little bit of like hoops that you got to go through, and I'm hoping that in time Nintendo's going to kind of realize that and at least make a little bit more of an exception in terms of like how they actually allow you to share your own library between another Switch, whether the Switch is yours or your wife's or your kids. Because the Nintendo Switch Lite, face it or not, that's the demographic. It's basically for kids, and that's basically who's going to end up with it. Of course, all of us, you know, all of us big kids, we had to go out and get it, and I don't mind. I really like this thing, and yeah, after 3 weeks, it's still playing good, still feeling good in the hands. I gotta say, one of the first things that people talked about was this thing not being as loud, and that the speaker placement didn't kind of work with it facing towards the bottom versus it coming out of the front. But I gotta say, I actually think that they might have went with a different set of speakers on this, because as far from what I notice, especially a game like Dragon Quest XI, every time you start the game, it kind of opens up with this big cinematic music, and it definitely sounds just bassier and heavier, and while not louder, it has more presence to it in the Nintendo Switch Lite. So I don't know, did anybody out there with a Nintendo Switch Lite let me know if you noticed a difference? Not really in the volume, because it doesn't matter if something's louder or not, because I mean, it only gets so loud, but that kind of goes for the regular Switch. So even having this next to it, it's not that much louder, but it's more about the quality of the audio that's actually delivered through the speakers. And for me, for my personal experience, I gotta say that I think the quality that comes out of the speakers for the Nintendo Switch Lite, I think that's actually better than the original Switch. So anyways, guys, I just wanted to make this video as kind of a 3-week update to the Nintendo Switch Lite, and you know, whether or not you should get it. I do actually highly recommend this thing. It does feel good. It's small, it's sleek, it's slim, it feels good, but it's not too small, and it's not really that much smaller than the regular Switch, although there are people that still say that the Nintendo Switch Lite is too big. And then there's kind of this whole social sub-war on just what is actually portable. Now, there's cell phones that are completely bigger than this thing. I have a smaller cell phone, it's this big. And there's some people that pull a cell phone out of their pocket that's almost as long, or maybe not as long, but maybe as wide as a regular phone. The thing is just massive. And I've seen several phones that are like that are huge. And I'm not a big cell phone connoisseur, so it doesn't really matter to me, but it's kind of funny just the way that people say, like, you can't really put the Nintendo Switch Lite in your pocket, it's not really a portable, and it's like, come on now. The amount of games that you can play on this, you can pick it up one-handed and go, like it's a portable. Even if this thing were way bigger than the regular Switch, say we get a Pro and it's like, you know, like this big, I mean, that's still portable. You can take it in one hand and go, but hey, that's another argument for another day. So that's just kind of my thoughts and my update on the Nintendo Switch Lite. Did you get one? Are you planning on getting one? Did you have any problems with it? Is there anything that I didn't talk about that you would like to discuss, or maybe kind of like a disclaimer, things to look out for? Let me know in the comments down below. As always, guys, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the thumbs up. And to all my newer subscribers, I just want to thank you guys personally. Welcome to D-Dub, and there will be many more videos to come. So thank you everybody who watches and continues to just hit the like or leave a comment. Really means a lot to me, and thank you so much.